Hey, this is Lloyed Lobo, co-founder at Traction and Boast.AI. You're watching my favorite teenage podcaster, Sachin Syal's Ochakde show. Tune in and check it out.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Ochakde show. I'm your host Sachin Syal and I'm a 16-year-old award-winning entrepreneur from the Bay Area. I'm the co-founder and CEO of 3doshas.com. We're a lifestyle company transforming lives through coaching principles inspired by yoga and Ayurveda. If you're new here, this is a talk show or podcast where I interview entrepreneurs, executives, and inspiring individuals from all walks of life so we can learn from their stories and level up ourselves. The purpose of the show is to inspire you to go for it, which is what Ochakde means. Today's special guest is Lloyed Lobo. Let me tell you some more about him. He's a co-founder and board member at Boast.AI, a fintech platform that provides business with R&D and innovation funding. He's also the co-founder of Traction, which is a global community of more than 100,000 entrepreneurs and innovators. He has a very inspiring story of being a refugee of the Gulf War to then raising over $100 million for his company Boast. So Lloyd, thank you so much for being here today. Welcome to the Ochakde show. How's it going?
Ochakde, Chakde, India. I love it, man. I love it. Thank you for having me. I'm so inspired by you. I know you interview a lot of inspiring people, but I'm telling you, man, I am super inspired by your journey. 16-year-old hustle. Talk about hustle. You cold messaged me on LinkedIn. Yeah. And everything had this massive social proof. I have this podcast. I'm a founder. I'm a student. I've interviewed XYZ. So you threw in some big names there. Would love to get you on my show. And so you hit me with who you were, building credibility. You hit me with social proof. Mm-hmm. Folks, that's how you do it. Right? You don't go and message people and ask them to buy your stuff. First, you build relationships with them, and that's the perfect way you did it. And one of the great things is, you know, when you're new, when you're just starting out there, something I learned, if you want to meet cool people, be the person that hosts the cool parties, right? And so how do you do that outside of like hosting events, podcasts, interview people on the street? You want to meet cool people, be the person that hosts cool parties. Thank you for having me, Sachin.
Of course, I've been really looking forward to this. I think you have an incredibly inspiring story. I love your hat. I love the background. I'm excited. So let's just get started. Can you talk about Boast.AI? What does the company do and what's the mission?
Definitely. So our vision at Boast is to enable innovators to change the world. Every dollar spent in innovation returns 20 to the universe, to the economy. Vaccines, robots, clean drinking water. Yet in the last 15 years, more than 50% of the Fortune 500 companies have evaporated, and more companies fail because they can't innovate. Like if you look at the stock market and the most valuable companies, at the core of it, yes, the front line is showing revenue, but at the core of it, they're innovating, right? Innovators drive the world. But the thing is, most companies don't have the resources or the mechanics or the frameworks to innovate, and Boast helps innovators become successful. We're collecting data from their technical and financial systems to bring them money to invest more in innovation, and then bring them the insights so they know who to hire, what projects to invest in, and accelerate innovation, innovate better, innovate faster.
That's awesome. Well, it is an AI company. What does it mean to be an AI company? And there's like, .ai. So what does it mean to be an AI company?
We had this domain for like so many years before .ai was cool. I think what it means to be an AI company, even, ignore the hype right now because of OpenAI and generative AI. What it means to be an AI company is you're leveraging data to create better outcomes for your customers that are faster, that are more intelligent, right? Bringing insights to your customers. That's essentially it in a nutshell. I'll give you an example, how we started Boast. So globally, there's hundreds of billions of dollars available in government funding for innovation and businesses. Unfortunately, it's a cumbersome application process. It's prone to frustrating audits by the government, and it takes a long time to get the money. That's how we started. My co-founder used to work for a Big Four accounting firm that would help companies get these government tax credits and funding. And so we said, you know what? Funding, innovation drives the universe, but funding for these companies, government funding, is a laborious process. Let's fix that. So then how do you fix that, right? How do you do things manually in a manual world? You go and talk to people and you collect their data in pen and paper and files. But at the end of the day, when you look at any problem set, any manual industry, there's a few things that happen there. First is data collection. You're collecting that data. Then you need to normalize that data because there's unstructured data and structured data. After that, you're applying analysis, trying to understand, right, that data. What are the insights I learned from the data? And the last step is workflow. Those are the 4 steps. People overcomplicate things, but really is like, how do I collect this data? How do I normalize it? How do I make sense of it? And then how do I do some workflow on it to create outcomes for my customer, right? Now, of course, generative AI, LLMs, they've like put that on steroids. But back in the day was, if this, then that. If I know this, what else can I do?
Have you guys utilized ChatGPT in any way?
So I'm on the board, but when we had early access to OpenAI some 3 years ago. So, you know, when they were in beta and they had select companies had access to it. So we had access to it. So we were playing with that. So I just want to be sensitive of not oversharing as a board member, but we had access to OpenAI years ago. I think it was 2019 or late 2019 or early 2020 is when we had access to it. It's almost 3 years ago. And the things you can do with it blows your mind. But at the end of the day, you still need humans in the loop, man. Customers want an outcome. They don't want software. They don't want technology. Customers want an outcome. How would you like it if you try to buy something and it was like 90% there, 95% there, right? It's like selling you a half-eaten apple, right? You don't want. So, you know, I think all these technologies are great to give you research and insights and even recreate the future. But in industries where there's a large volume of unstructured data, which there is no patterns around, you will still need humans in the loop to do the last mile.
I definitely agree. Let's talk about traction. It says right there, traction. So you've had founders and CXOs from many big successful companies to join you. Can you talk about traction, and are there any meetups coming soon?
Yeah, definitely. So, you know, when we started Boast, me and my co-founder were out of his spare bedroom in his apartment. And we had been failed entrepreneurs ourselves. And nobody would talk to us really, right? Like, you're competing with Big Four accounting firms. So we're like, man, we're dejected. We'd cold call people, they'd hang up. Maybe some people respond to our emails. They're like, hey, let's put together a meetup. The one thing we know is we know a lot of people. We know a lot of successful people as a function of being around. Let's invite them and let's see how many people show up. Like what you're doing right now with the podcast, right? Or we're doing the Traction podcast. But back in the day, it wasn't, you know, podcast wasn't very popular. And so we'd host these meetups. And, you know, the first meetup, maybe 5-7 people showed up. And the next meetup, like 20 people showed up. And every time we did, more and more people show up. And then one day, almost 200 people showed up.
Damn.
And then the co-working space is like, guys, this is a full-blown conference. You can't do this here. And that evolved eventually into Traction Conference. So I'm a big believer in community. And a function of building this community was, hey, we're founders. We're new founders or unsuccessful founders. We don't know anything. We're just starting out. Let's invite somebody who we can learn from. But at the same time, there are other founders who are experiencing the same thing. And back then, the conferences were all very high level, like, you know, aspirational stuff. Nobody tells you exactly what they did to get, like, you know, the first X customers or the tactics they use. So we do these closed room things, and more people would show up. And I truly believe, man, if you help people without expecting anything in return, magic happens in your life. And as a function of democratizing that knowledge for free to people without charging for it, bringing them access, we started getting more and more customers. We started getting social proof. We built this community that would congregate, that end up being our customers, and we bootstrapped to 8 figures. And as we did more and more traction events, podcasts, live webinars, our customer and our revenue started growing as well. And there's great truth to that, right? If you want to meet cool people, be the person that hosts the cool parties. If you want to engineer good luck in your life, just help enough other people become successful. And it's not something I learned on my own. My parents are from India. My mother grew up in a slum in Mumbai with 9 other siblings. And they had a really small house with no even bathroom, right? Like they had to go outside, like the common bathroom, toilet. And anytime I go to Mumbai as a kid, I'd see somebody or the other staying in their house, and I'd ask, hey, you guys barely have space for yourselves. Why do you have this random person here? Because Mumbai was the New York of India. It is, still is. And the answer I'd get back is, the only way to create abundance in your life is to help other people without expecting anything in return. I kid you not, man. Everything I am today, I attribute to those learnings. All of my mom's siblings and their kids are obviously not in that slum. They're well off everywhere else. And I feel there's, a lot of people don't agree with karma, but I think there's great karma in just helping without expecting in return. And so that was one of my innate values, is if I build a company, it has to be community first. When 2 people teach, when one teaches, 2 learn, right? And so you're getting this knowledge when you're bringing this leader. That leader is also meeting new people, and the whole experience just creates more positivity, more energy, right? The leader who speaks gets positive recognition. The leader builds better connections in the network. The people in the room build connections with each other. And over time, I found, as Traction's now grown to over 100,000 subscribers, people message me and say, I met my investor, or I met an employee, or I met an important connection. And that is so valuable, right? That is so, so valuable. And I seriously, there was a time right after the big raise, I almost died of COVID, and I was hospitalized, and the number of messages, thousands upon thousands of messages, which made me feel that way, that the karma of spreading positivity in the community without expecting anything in return is the reason why I'm alive today.
Wow. It's probably one of my best episodes so far. I'm not just saying it because you're here, but this is real podcast right now. And thank you for sharing all that. I think Traction is such a great idea. Bringing people together and creating a community. If there are any meetups coming soon, I'd love to come and meet you in person.
So I'll tell you the story here. So every year we do a big conference in Vancouver. We did one in SF, and then we moved it away because SF, there's a lot of conferences. And so we moved it away to Vancouver because it requires people to travel, right? And so the speakers would then spend 2-3 days and not just do their talks and go back to the office. Last year took a sabbatical deliberately after 10 years plus in the startup community, 3 failed startups, Boast did well. While building a community in parallel, my brains were shot. I needed to take a break. I hadn't spent enough time with my family, with my kids. So at the last Traction, I said I'm taking a sabbatical, peeled out to Dubai of all the places. Dubai is Miami meets Mumbai on steroids, safer, great energy, great positivity, fitness culture. So moved here, and I've taken a break. So this year we won't do an in-person conference. We've been doing a lot of small private meetups, but we'll bring it back over the summer, and definitely we'll keep you posted. Meanwhile, we do a podcast release every other week. So remember, you're a podcaster. We used to do 2 live webinars a week. 2 live. How hard it is to drive thousands of people to attend a live conversation like this, then post the video on YouTube, the audio on podcasts. So 2 a week on top of the meetups and retreats, and then the big conference. And I while also running Boast, got burnt out. I'm like, I had no time for family, kids, nothing. And as a big realization hit me is we did this big raise, right? We sold a majority stake in the company, me and my co-founder. And I got really busy because it was COVID times. So we're trying to close this raise. At the same time, we're worried about growing the business. So we're like, okay, let's, COVID hit, we can't do in-person events. Let's supercharge the online events. So we started doing more and more and more webinars, 2 a week. And, hundreds of people would come, like first like 10, 15 people, then 100, then 500, then 1,000. Our subscriber base in the last few years grew from like 20, I think like almost 30-ish to 100, right? Just from that consistency. But then we went down this path of capital, right? Selling a majority stake to a private equity firm, growth equity firm. And it's a long, drawn out process while also running this community. And my wife would always say, it's not about celebrating all at once. It's not about the one vacation a year. It's about stopping to smell the roses. You don't spend any time with us. You're always on your phone. And I'm like, listen, when the deal happens, we're going to go to Bora Bora. I promise. I'm going to take everyone, like not only you and the kids, but also my parents and my sister and her kids and her husband. So the deal happens. And we booked the Bora Bora trip. A couple of days before the Bora Bora trip, I wake up unable to breathe. My oxygen levels drop.
Oh my God.
I get rushed to the hospital. And I had bilateral COVID pneumonia. My lungs were shot. And I sat there in the hospital and I'm like, if I died today, my biggest regret is what my wife said. You never stopped to smell the roses. I never spent any time with my kids. So, I end up realizing that. And then after that incident, Boast ended up adding almost 100 people in 6-7 months. And that is crazy, right? Going from a 30-person company to a 130-person company. And then my 9-year-old comes to me and she's like, hey, Dad, everything you said in that press article is BS. I mean, she was 7 at the time and she didn't use the word BS. She's like, everything you said in the article is a lie. You said, if you could go back in time, you would spend more time with the family. And she's like, you've gotten worse. I said, listen, this is the biggest company I've worked for. And we've added so many people and it's chaos. And I don't even know, we need to make sure that people who put their faith in a startup like us are made whole and the company's the right path. There's a lot to do. And she says to me, Dad, why don't you go and work for someone who thinks like that so I can have my dad back? And that hit me like a 1-2 punch. A few weeks later, I had my 3rd child. And for the 3rd time, my wife went into labor and I wasn't at home. I was on a business trip. And my phone's covered and there's calls. I pick up the phone and I'm like, there's 12 some odd missed calls. I call back and her friend picks up and she's like, every time she's in labor, you're somewhere else. Like, is the business that important? Right? And then I was like, I had to find a flight back and I go back. And then a few weeks after that, I transitioned out of the company. We agreed to bring new leadership to take us to the next level. And I felt like I lost my identity, man. I felt I lost everything. I built my identity around this company, right? And one day it was gone. Everyone was surprised with that decision. One day it's gone. No Slack, no community. And we built the company with a lot of love. With, every year, even when we had no money, we'd take the team to Cabo, Costa Rica, Hawaii, because we're a remote first company. And I truly believe to supercharge remote first, you need to empower in-person connections as well, right? And because anytime we incorporate more than 2 senses, we start to build stronger relationships. If we were doing this in person, we'd probably eat a meal together, we'd probably hang out, probably spend 4 hours together, right? So you strengthen those bonds. So we do meetups in different cities. We do an offsite in Cabo, Costa Rica, Hawaii. So I felt like I lost my tribe. I lost my identity. And so, no matter how good the financial outcome is, as a founder, when you leave a startup you started that you built your identity around, it like comes with mental health issues, right? Like you go crazy in a way. And so that's kind of what happened to me. And then I started this journey of being frustrated and irritated and drinking frivolously and overeating and just life lost its meaning basically, right? I was just clueless and just it wasn't, nothing felt like it was worth it. I became this insufferable person, channeling my endless energy into like all the wrong things. Just be frustrated all the time, right? I'd gone from being a co-founder, president of this highly valued company to hitting rock bottom. And then one day my wife, who's a physician at Stanford and also teaches medicine there, she had enough. And she's like, she cornered me, asked me to sit down. And she's like, hey, the glass is always half full. You're fortunate to be in this position where you can do whatever you want. But by killing yourself, you're not only doing a disservice to your family, but the community that you work so hard to build. And so that was a big wake-up call for me. And I'm like, you know what? I had become overweight, like, significantly overweight. And you've seen my picture on LinkedIn. Yeah. And so I started to pick up myself. And, as I was looking at the journey, also community is what helped me pick myself up. I'm a big, big believer in community. So, that day after the conversation with my wife, I had lunch with Atlassian's president, Anu Bharadwaj, in San Francisco. And after sharing my sob story, she talked about her own struggles with like losing her passion. She worked in tech for 12 years. She felt burnt out. She went to the co-CEO of Atlassian to resign. And he's like, hey, don't quit. Take the time off you need, then decide what you want to do. And so she took a year-long sabbatical, spent an entire year fulfilling her longtime passion, which was wildlife conservation. She helped rehabilitate like lions and cheetahs in Africa and penguins in Antarctica. And she traveled the world basically. And she returned back to Atlassian happy and whole and to become the president of the company, right? And she, as we said goodbye over lunch, she had this one final piece of advice to me that hit me like a truck. She's like, self-care is never selfish. It is good stewardship towards the only way you can create impact in the world. It's like putting your oxygen mask first, right? The things you do outside of your job, the way you take care of yourself, just makes you a better person overall, right? It makes you more abundant. It makes you more experienced. It adds more depth to your life. It makes you happier. And, I lay in bed that night, here's this guy who felt at the top of the world and all this, TechCrunch, Forbes, Fox Business interviewed me, to almost dying of COVID, to being out of the day-to-day operations of a company I co-founded, to now like overeating, slob, drunk, frustrated. And so I had these two conversations back to back, my wife earlier and then Anu at Atlassian. And as I lay in bed with these thoughts, I looked across the bedroom, and in the corner, serving as a makeshift towel rack, was my Peloton, right? That I hadn't used in months, in years actually. So I got out of the bed, threw the clothes and the towels to the side, my first ride, and that 20 minutes flew by in 20 seconds. And I'll remember that ride for the rest of my life, right? Starting that workout, I instantly felt a connection to the instructor, Robin Arzon. She began by sharing her journey post-pregnancy where she couldn't work out like her usual self. And the song Eye of the Tiger was playing in the background, like doom, 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 dun, dun, dun. And she told us like self-pity is toxic. To defeat it, you have to start with one rep, one step, one walk around the block, one crank. I can, she said. And those words coursed through my veins as I took that first crank of the pedals and the next one and the next one. And I kept repeating those words, I can. And best of all, despite riding in my bedroom in the middle of the night, I didn't feel alone. I could see all the riders on the sidebar, making me feel like I was part of something bigger. And that one ride turned into 2 and 3. And before I knew it, I was in a 2-week streak, completely hooked, right? And so after many months of feeling lost, I finally found something I could control, my health. Peloton It gave me a sense of autonomy over my transformation. With every ride, I felt, my personal fitness was becoming better and better. I cramped up the resistance, the speed. I was mastering the bike. And most importantly, those rides started to feel and remind me of a greater sense of purpose, which was good health being the key to helping me run the marathon of family and community. There's massive energy with the music, the instructors' chants and words of encouragement, and the virtual high fives of the riders, and the rewards and the streaks was great recognition. And so over time, I started weight training, cleaned up my diet, improved my sleep. But Eye of the Tiger is still my morning ritual. I wake up after giving thanks for something great that happened the night before, because the glass is always half full. Somebody else is going through something you know nothing about, right? Your life is always better than someone else's. So I turn on that song then after giving thanks and pump out as many push-ups as I can. So the reason I brought this is, starting with, I'm a big believer in community, build a community-led business, build traction. But when I was in my darkest hours, the Peloton community picked me up and gave me a sense of direction again. And so through this, I talked about connection, autonomy, mastery, purpose, energy, and recognition. Camper, if you have this, institute this proactively in your community, in your relationships, in your business, you will build lasting relationships, right? Connection. How do you build connection with each other? Everyone wants to feel connected. Autonomy. No one wants to be micromanaged. They want to be in charge of their own destiny. Mastery, because they want to get better and better and better at something. Purpose. Great companies are built on great purpose. Great relationships are built on great purpose. What is the greater purpose that you guys are striving for? Energy, because we're not robots, right? And the last one is recognition. What if you worked every single day of the week, but nobody give you a pat on your back or said, hey man, you're doing something right, or you're doing something good? You're going to be like, why am I doing this eventually, right? We're all humans.
Yeah.
So that's how I landed on that camper.
Wow, this is so inspiring. I mean, we pre-show, we talked about how I have a wellness and lifestyle company. Literally everything you've done is exactly what we want to teach people on how they should live their life. So I think I didn't know. I've watched your stuff. I've read up about you, but I don't know. I didn't know about all this other stuff. So this is exclusive to the Ochakde show that all the people are watching. They get to know this about you. As we wrap up here, these are the last two questions that I asked all my guests. The first one is, what is your best advice for teens?
The best advice for teens I can share, and I wish somebody shared this with me, is whatever you're passionate about, right? Just do it outside of your school. Yeah. Your school is what they teach you. You become what you repeatedly do, right? And so in your teens, you may have I want to learn to dance, or I want to be a Bollywood star, or I want to learn music, or I want to play sports. Do all those things. Do them. I want to start a business. Do them. You wanted to start a business, and you're learning as you go, right? I wish I had that. Nobody told me that. It's you have to study to get grades to go. All of that will happen. But don't give up on your passions and your hobbies. When passion meets profession, you become Michael Jackson. Just be consistent. Sometimes it's a funnel, right? So, people ask me a lot, how do I build an audience on LinkedIn or on newsletter or whatever? First you pick the niche, right, that you're going after, and then you create a lot of content. In the beginning, you don't know what your audience wants. You just do a lot, right? Start with volume, right? Basically quantity. Over time, the feedback will tell you what's resonating, and then you'll improve the quality. It's like a funnel. But through that whole motion is being consistent. When you're a teenager, you don't know a lot of things. I wanted to learn to dance when I was a kid and all these things. And I never had the opportunity because it was always focused on studies. Now I'm 42, right? I learned to dance. I take dance lessons, salsa, bachata, even Bollywood, right? I love Bollywood music. I work out. I do everything that I wanted to ever do as a kid, I'm doing. And now I think to myself, I wish I just scheduled those over time. So you may have passions and hobbies. Just invest your time in doing them, a bunch of things. over time, you'll realize what you love and what you gravitate towards. You'll find your passion, and then just go deeper and deeper and deeper there. Because you
Yeah,
asked
and
me a question of, hey, what should
yeah,
teens do? You didn't ask me what should teens do to start a business. And
yeah, yeah. I mean, the audience for my show, there's some aspiring entrepreneurs, but there's also people that just want to learn. That's why I just ask, what's your best advice for teens?
and entrepreneurship comes from passions, man. So like my
Yeah,
9-year-old, she does a whole bunch of different things. The two things, and one thing I'm really proud of is she has this joy of giving too. She just wrote this letter to her school to install donation boxes so kids can give away toys that they don't use anymore, right? Like,
was this on
so
LinkedIn?
yeah, it was on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I saw that was, dude, that was so good. That was awesome.
And she's like, I get so many gifts, right? Kids these days, parties, gifts. But I have old toys, so I get new. I give for every toy I get new, I give one away new. And she started a ritual at our house actually. So every time I go shopping now, I'm not gonna buy new clothes if I don't have one. Like basically, the rule is you buy something new, then you got to give something away. So she inspired me to learn that. But the other thing she loves is art, and so she's now trying to learn how to take her art online and sell it. But what I'm saying is, the focus on money destroys relationships. No, sorry, the focus on money leads to short-term decisions. The focus on control destroys relationships. The only way to create something lasting is to focus on impact. So money, short-term decisions, control destroys relationships. You want to build something lasting, focus on impact. And so if you're really passionate about something, you'll do it wholeheartedly, you'll do it to create impact. But when you start thinking about money, then it becomes very transactional, right? As kids, you need to maintain the love for the craft. Learn to love the craft, and then the craft will love you. Money doesn't create vision, vision creates money. So learn to love the craft and keep loving it and keep investing more and more time into your passions, your craft. Over time, that will create money for you. Money doesn't produce vision, vision produces money.
I'm gonna remember that, and I'm gonna tell other people that, but I'll give you credit for that. I won't say this is my quote or anything.
Yeah, it's fine. I've probably heard it. Like, I'm the sum of the hundreds of people, thousands of people, entrepreneurs that I've spent time with, successful people I've spent time with. So, sometimes you forget, but like I'm the sum of those thoughts, and you will be as well, right?
Awesome. So what was your favorite part of being on my show?
You have an incredible smile and an incredible amount of energy. I feed off energy, and in life, you attract the energy that you give out. So you give out great positive energy, which makes the guest very positive. I love your story. You're a teenager, you messaged me on LinkedIn, and you had the perfect message, right? You started with, I'm a teenager, this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm doing, here's social proof who all have been associated with my show. I'd love to have you on the show for XYZ reason. So you researched me, you had social proof, you gave me the why, and I was hooked, and I'm like, you know what, I gotta be on here. And you're gonna build this audience on your podcast to eventually create a community by bringing people together in person, events and whatnot. And that community you create and the energy you put out is going to drive your business 3 doshas, and it's going to eventually drive the next thing and the next thing. You're going to build an incredible network, and I can see a younger version of myself in you, and wishing you all the best, man. You're going to go places. I know it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the kind words. It was so nice to have you on this show. I really, really enjoyed this episode. Guys, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you guys next time.